Hey, lady. So I think that we need to talk about what to expect for your first day of school because I don't know about you, but I am a homeschooling mom putting my kids into school for the first time, and there were a lot of things that I did not know about until right before school started. So my second grader is going into public school who's been homeschooled, and then my kindergarten is also going into public school at the same time. And we had a new parent to the district orientation to go to, and then we had a meet and greet, find your seat for my second grader, and then we had a meet the teacher for the kindergartners' parents. But the kindergartners were not allowed to attend, which I thought that was kind of interesting. You might need to rearrange childcare ahead of time. But during the meet and greet and find your seat, I totally forgot to bring all of my son's supplies. And his teacher did say, like, hey, it's not a big deal. He can just bring them to school on his first day. So we go and we get all of our paperwork, we bring it home. And I'm sitting there, going through it like a good parent should. I'm also a type A, so I'm going to be reading it all. And I kid you not, there are more forms for me to fill out, which a lot of the forms that I filled out ahead of time were like for their before and after care. And then also some like state forms for immunizations and like concussions and stuff. We kind of talked about that already in another conversation. And so I was just kind of surprised with how many new forms that I had to fill out and sign. Like some of the information was similar, and all of those needed to be returned the next day before school started. So those are some things that you might see. The other thing that I thought was super interesting was in my second grader's documents, he needed a release form for us to sign for him to be able to ride the bus for any like field trips or like going to the like local park down the street or like other things like that, for any like in district immediate surrounding town transportation. Now, he is not going to be riding the bus to and from school. And so I think maybe that's possibly why I had a separate form to sign specific to transportation, or maybe they just give it to all parents. I'm not super sure. But I did have that release form to sign. And then also for his teacher, he had like a little waiver that asked for parental permission for her to show PG movies in his classroom. Those are some things that kind of surprised me about the forms. But then my kindergartner, there were a couple things that kind of irritated me as a parent. So I had already gone through and purchased all the supplies based off of the kindergartner supply list. And I noticed that on the supply list for him that they specifically said, please do not provide, at least the one that I got the day before he's supposed to start school. It said, please make sure that the water bottles you send your child to school with is not screw top. And I had already kind of told you that I purposefully bought screw top lids because I hate clean straws. And it said, please, for the kindergarten class, make sure that they have like a sports type drink water bottle, kind of like the ones that I would think of are like, Gatorade bottles, because the other ones tend to spill. And I was just like, you couldn't have put that on the supply list? Like that would have made my life so much easier. And they also wanted to be sent to school with 2 water bottles, one specific in his lunchbox to carry back and forth to lunch. And then the other one can be with him in his classroom or in his backpack. And I was kind of also like, how am I going to, thankfully we did have 2 water bottles that met their like top description. But I was just like, how am I going to get this to fit into his lunchbox? Because it does not fit in very well with, his like bento box. So that was like, I still have to figure that out. Thankfully, he's been participating in school lunches, so he hasn't quite yet needed like a full lunch plus a water bottle to fit in his backpack. But yeah, now I'm gonna have to figure out like some other option for him. And then they also specifically said for my kindergartner's classroom that he's going to need a snack every day, but that there are specific classrooms that are peanut free and other classrooms that are not peanut free. So he's not currently in a classroom that is peanut free, but after talking to his teacher, she's like, yeah, I think I'm just going to designate my classroom as a peanut free classroom. Like it's not super challenging for parents, like it should be pretty easy. So I think I'm just going to go peanut free. And I was kind of thinking, I was like, peanut butter is one of the main food sources that my kid eats. And most of the snacks that we have consumed at our house have been like something in addition to peanut butter. And so I was kind of thinking like, okay, what snack can I send to school? Because I need to provide a snack for him every day that doesn't have peanuts in it. Now, thankfully, she doesn't have anyone currently in her classroom that has a peanut allergy, but she's just doing it as a precaution. But then I was like, okay, well, how does that translate to lunch? Because there may be some lunches that I know as a parent he's not going to eat, and the default thing that I would send him to school would be peanut butter and jelly. But if she can't have peanuts in her classroom, like, how does that all work? And she had said, and I don't know if it's specific for your school, like, this might be a really good question to ask, hence why we're having this conversation, is that at lunch, there's a specific peanut free table that all of the kids that have peanut allergies sit at to consume their lunch, and then everyone else in the classroom, I guess, can like sit anywhere else, which I know that some peanut allergies can be fairly mild, but other ones can be very severe. Like, I knew a little boy growing up that if you ate a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and then you talked to him and you had too much peanut butter on your breath, he would go into anaphylactic shock. Now, I'm assuming then that no one at our, no one in my kindergartner's class is similar to that severity, but I was like, oh, that would have been helpful to know about before school starts tomorrow, because then I can better prepare for like sending him snacks to school and stuff like that. So I think we'll have it figured out for the first week, but then after that, I'll just need to be like, okay, I'll need to be a little bit more mindful about what I can send to school with him. And then for my second grader, for his classroom, instead of providing their own snacks, one classmate is assigned a snack on a specific day in the calendar, and it has to be a healthy snack. And then they listed out what they consider to be healthy snacks. Except for their birthday, they can bring like an actual like prepackaged dessert or something like that. Now, thankfully, his snack day did not fall on the first day of school, but I was just like, oh man, like, to make sure we don't forget that snack on his snack day, that I almost was kind of like, I just wish that for consistency across kindergarten and like second grade, that they would just do it the same way. Instead of like, oh, this child needs a snack, this child doesn't need a snack, but on this specific day, I need to bring a snack for everybody. So as a parent, I was just like, this is just adding another layer of complexity to my life that I would have just been a little bit more appreciative knowing that prior to the day right before school started. So if you are concerned at all about that, maybe see if you can reach out to your teacher and ask beforehand. So the other thing that my kindergartner, that they expressed in the packet that they sent home the night before school, was for my kindergartner to pack an extra change of clothes in like a freezer Ziploc bag so it can be sealed. And the reason why they're having us do that is because if, accidents happen and if they spill anything on their clothes, or if they, have an accident in the bathroom or something like that, then they have something that they can change it into. And they did also express in the documents and paperwork that if your child is sent home in someone else's clothes, to please wash them and return them like immediately. And things sometimes get mixed up despite your, desire to label everything. So yeah, I pulled all that together for my kindergartner, but I actually also decided to do that for my second grader, even though I don't anticipate there being a problem or an accident or anything like that. I just decided to go ahead and be proactive about it and put an extra change of clothes in his backpack as well, because things happen like spills, and both of my kiddos are a little bit picky when it comes to their clothes. They don't like having, things spilled on them, but I figured that would be better than like being called at work and being like, hey, we need you to stop by the school and bring a change of clothes for your son. And that's already taken care of. Another thing that I did appreciate in both of their packets was like a separate form specifically for the teacher that was like, hey, is there anything specific that gets your kid excited? Is there anything specific that you as a parent would like us to know? So it did give me an opportunity to kind of express some of my concerns with just like different like behaviors that we're working on at home, and kind of like how we have dealt with them if they do come up in the classroom. I know that this was going to be an adjustment for them as much as it will be for me. I will probably send a email to each of their teachers, and maybe the teachers will do this on their own. I'm not super sure. Just like kind of asking and checking in like, hey, how did the first week go? Is there anything that anything that we can work on at home to just help make it, a better smooth transition for them. And I know that the first week there's a lot of adjusting going on. So, it's going to take a little bit of time to settle into their new routine too. How am I doing with putting them into school? So I don't know how much time we've hung out together, but like one of the things that I'm feeling pretty significantly is just like all of the feelings, all of the feels. Like I was feeling fairly emotional going through all of the paperwork and just like realizing like, wow, I'm signing a lot of waivers, and all of these waivers mean because something can happen to them. Like there's this risk out there. And I'm just going to give a quick trigger warning for anyone that may be sensitive to this topic. So now is your time to leave. So I was put in a position as a young child where the people that are the adults that are supposed to protect me ended up not being the adults that protected me, if you kind of get my gist. And so because of that, I've been very fearful of allowing my kids to go into certain environments that I don't necessarily have control over. Like this is one of the reasons why we did decide to keep them home. This is one of the reasons why we did homeschool. But I also know as an adult, as a mom, that I cannot protect them from the entire world, despite my desire to always keep them safe and take care of them and protect them. And that this is a really healthy, good layer of like letting them go and letting them become their own person and allowing them to be assertive and giving them skills to be able to take care of themselves. But then also like knowing like, okay, they can't fully take care of themselves. And there's always going to be an opportunity out there for someone to, that is in a position of power and authority over them that could not be a trustworthy individual. And from my experience, I've always had the opinion that a background check doesn't indicate that someone's safe. A background check just means someone hasn't been caught, because again, that was my experience. So just like going through all of that and just like feeling really emotional, like knowing that it's good for them, but just like the reality of all of that just really hitting me while I was going through signing all those papers, because I was like, okay, tomorrow, they're going out into the world and I won't be right there to protect them anymore and keep them from harm and keep them safe. And I think a lot of moms probably experience this a lot earlier in their motherhood journey. Like they might experience this as soon as they return from maternity leave, because that's typically when parents put their kids in daycare. And I'm just experiencing it so much later, which was intentional, but also just now realizing like I can't escape the feeling, but it's also just like the reality of that hitting me was a lot more than what I was expecting. I was expecting like, oh, I logically understand why we've made this decision. I feel really confident in our decision. But that despite knowing the logic of our decisions, that doesn't always necessarily mean that our emotions follow that logic. So yeah, so that's kind of everything that I wish I knew before school started. So if you have anything that you would like to add, I would love it if you would, help us continue this conversation in the comments. But now it's your turn. If you have anything else or any additional questions, or if you have a topic for another upcoming chit chat, you can drop it down below or use the link to submit it anonymously. But I do hope that we can hang out again soon.